God, it burns, it burns.
Shh, it's the Film Flamers.
Hi, I'm Chris.
Hi, I'm Robert.
And we're the Film Flamers.
Today we're bringing you a new episode that we like to call
Shooting the Flames.
This is sort of a very relaxed conversation between Chris and I, where we bring in a lot of things that we like to talk about off mic. Things like horror news, new trailers that are coming out for upcoming movies, and we're also going to be bringing you some listener interactive stuff too. So to start things off, let's get in touch with our listeners and see what they have to say.
The first comment I have is from our top 10 film scores, and it's from Casey on Facebook. It says,
I'm really happy to hear you guys list a number of scores that truly do deserve more attention, but I am shocked, I tell you, at the lack of any Goblin on your lists. The Deep Red and Suspiria scores are not only insanely good, but influenced countless future composers within the genre. I made peace with the lack of Morricone, laugh out loud, but it really was a major surprise to hear Goblin overlooked. Really looking forward to hearing you discuss more horror film music in the future, for sure. It's such a rich and diverse topic that you both really know a lot about.
Well, thank you, Casey.
Thank you for saying so, Casey. And let me just say, I really applaud your diction on Facebook, because that's exactly how I talk and type. So,
Yep.
Great.
And to answer your question, honestly, Goblin was basically number 11.
Yeah.
I mean, we really struggled with putting that on, and it was basically our runner-up for, and we actually, I believe we mentioned it a couple times.
I think so.
You know, so it's just, for me, a lot of this is kind of subjective. I like to base my top 10s not only on my subjective view of things and my experience and preferences, but also on what is considered in the industry and sometimes in the actual communities, in this case, the film score community, either the fans or the film scorers themselves. And honestly, a lot of the top 10s that I saw floating around did have Goblin on there, and pretty high. But we really struggled with that. And I don't know why. It really almost made our list. It was higher up on my list, actually, to begin with. But I just had to whittle it down and just put some of the higher, in my opinion, some of the higher influencers in the wider genre of filmmaking and not just horror. But yes, we completely agree with you that Goblin is incredibly influential and those scores are amazing.
And more than just Goblin, too. I think a lot of the giallo scores from these movies are fantastic. In fact, if you keep listening to this episode, I'll be talking about that again later on. But, I sort of base my top 10s really on a visceral experience, or sonic in this particular case, and listenability to myself and things that I listen to more often than not. And while I listened to Goblin quite a bit, it just didn't make the top 10 cut. Now, I will say that if we ever revisit this topic again in the future, which I'm pretty sure we will, I'm telling you that Goblin's going to be on there for sure. So.
Oh, yeah. Goblin's going to make some of our other lists. I mean, it's iconic.
So definitely stay tuned, and thank you for that comment, Casey. The next round of comments come from another top 10, and that was our creepy love songs from February. Darren on Facebook, who is also the host of the Psychosemitic podcast, suggests a song Married Girl by the Slackers. And Darren, I listened to that song, and it is indeed creepy and right up my alley. He says,
It's a nice list. Yet another fun episode. Does Closer by 9 Inch Nails count as creepy?
It's definitely creepy,
Oh
but
my God, yes.
I almost don't want to say it's a love song, though.
it's a very specific kind of love, right?
Yeah, it's disturbing, like right up there with Number One Crush, but Number One Crush is about love, right?
Yeah.
And I think this guy just wants to.
Fuck you like an animal.
So.
I mean, and I'm sure he loves them in his own particular way, but Darren, that really does count. And if that's high on your list, we applaud it because we do love that song.
Yeah, and I think it's actually on our, it may be on our actual Spotify playlist.
If not, it was definitely on our Halloween Spotify playlist. So.
Erica from Twitter said,
I listened to the number one song on this list on repeat for about 6 months straight, in case you wondered what it was like to hang out with 16-year-old Erica.
So, yeah, I think my sister, actually, I still remember my sister listening to Number One Crush on repeat for months after it came out, and I actually enjoyed the song, too, at the time. Obviously, everyone loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Or anyone that was aware of it.
It was a huge hit for Garbage.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I was 17 or so when that song came out, so I know exactly how she feels, and I did the same thing. In fact, I can go so far as to say I listened to that soundtrack on repeat for months and months and months. That movie totally took over my life for a period of time, and I still have a fondness for that soundtrack.
And I was actually obsessed with the film score for that film. There was 2 soundtracks out for this movie. and both were excellent.
So thank you, Erica, for that comment. Matthew from Twitter says,
Thanks to you guys. Perfect commute today. First half was the episode, and the second half was your Spotify playlist.
That's a long-ass commute.
yeah, I know. So, I mean, if you got through that entire Spotify playlist, Matthew,
And our top 10?
congrats. I mean, or maybe you should move closer to your job or something, maybe. I don't know. But thank you for saying that. We obviously added a whole bunch of songs to the Spotify playlist, more than just our top 10. It was some runners-up and other favorites of creepy love songs. And I think if we revisit this topic again, we'll probably pick from some of those runners-up to do maybe another top 10. So if you really liked it, Matthew, just keep listening. We'll have another one.
Brock from Twitter, and of course Brock is our brother from another mother, or our work wife, from the Cocktail Party Massacre podcast, says,
This episode was a blast. So many thoughts. Agreed with almost anything from Fever Ray's first album. The Alanis Morissette song, yes. I'm on Fire is among my favorite songs. Creepier version by Bat for Lashes. Also, check out her song Horse and I. Creepiest song in my opinion. Billie Holiday's You're Gonna See a Lot of Me. Keep up the great work. Heart.
That is a fantastic suggestion, Brock. That is a creepy song, and I love, love, love Billie Holiday. But even more than that, I love, 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 love Bat for Lashes. So thank you for saying that.
Yep.
Literally, Bat for Lashes song, What's a Girl to Do, was my number 11 choice. It was so close to making the cut. And I know Chris has heard this song now.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, it just sounds creepy, even if the lyrics are not. And she just has a way of injecting this creepy, scary quality to her music, like all the way through it. And it's fantastic. So I'm so glad that you love her too.
and I have to make a confession, Brock. I'm sorry, but I have actually not listened to Fever Ray's first album. I only know this song.
Well, get on it, man.
I know. So obviously I need to. I wasn't even aware that like everything else they did was great too. I mean, I should have guessed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll check it out. Thanks, Brock.
Based on my conversations with Brock, I know that he's a big music fan. So if we have some more music episodes, Brock, we really would love to have some of your input and comments. So keep them coming. Next up, we asked you guys on social media to submit some questions to Chris and myself for us to answer on this episode and future episodes of Shooting the Flames. And we got a really good amount this time, and we've chosen a couple to answer.
Yeah. So Jay on Facebook says,
How did you guys get into horror movies? What motivated you guys to start a podcast? Any horror novels that you guys absolutely love?
Look at Jay coming in strong with a 3-part question.
So how did you get into horror movies?
My mother is very much into horror movies, and they were sort of always on in the background when I was growing up. And so as a young child, I sort of caught glimpses of them. And I think it really just, influenced my brain quite a bit. And then by the time I became 8 or 9, 10 years old, I was very obsessed with anything that was remotely scary that I could get my hands on, be it, books or music or TV shows, movies, right? And I just watched them all the time, and it just slowly turned me into who I am today. And, it's the first thing that I go for when I pick a movie to watch, right? So, I mean, that's pretty much it. Over the years, I have seen countless amounts of horror movies, some of them countless amounts of times, and it's just really who I am as a person.
And for me, like, I think I just stumbled upon horror, like on TV, throughout the years, and they scared the hell out of me. I think one of the first experiences was like watching Student Bodies, which is a comedy horror, right? And I didn't know that I was too young, like 6 years old or something, to understand that it was comedy. And so it was a straight horror for me. And it was kind of an easy kind of dip into horror in that sense, if you think about it, right? And then I think my mind really got blown because Aliens came on, Aliens came out in 86. So it would have been on TV by the 90s, or the early 90s at least. And so I remember just blew my mind because I already loved genre films as a kid, and fantasy and sci-fi and a lot of the horror themes and different things, all the horror adjacency that we go through as we watch anything from Disney films to other genre films.
And I think that growing up in the 80s, or being a young child in the 80s, we were pretty rife with like some sort of dark children's programming. Things like The Never-Ending Story or Return to Oz were incredibly dark, and it's a really easy gateway into the horror genre.
Sure.
I mean,
like Dark Crystal.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
What was that Disney movie, The Black Cauldron? I mean,
Or Labyrinth. There's so much of it in the 80s to sort of like warp our young minds, as it were. I know that some of the earliest horror movies that I watched as a kid would be like A Nightmare on Elm Street, Night of the Creeps, things that were in that 1985 to 1987 range. And it just sparked my love, and everything grew from there. And
I still remember, like, in not even just movies, but watching Are You Afraid of the Dark on Nickelodeon and Unsolved Mysteries, and just eating it up.
Definitely.
Yeah. And just even as a small child. Just eating my macaroni and cheese with a glass of milk in front of the TV, watching Unsolved Mysteries, and just blowing my little kid mind.
Oh, you little cheddar goblin.
And watching old VHSs of my parents' recordings of like Twilight Zone and stuff. So loved it.
So, I mean, obviously we could go on and on and on with that particular question, but your second one, what motivated you guys to start the podcast?
Conversations.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about this, and since we became friends, we have always had conversations about horror movies or horror adjacency. I think Chris and I like to explore the genre as a whole and talk about how movies that are not quite set in the horror genre can be considered to be a horror movie, and it sort of grew from there.
Yeah, and we're kind of on the same wavelength anyway. We're one of those friends that could talk until like, from 10 at night until 7 in the morning, and we've done that.
Yeah.
And there's a couple times where people just kind of listen to us, like as we're talking, and have told us that we're entertaining or that we riff off each other really well. There's several times that we've had long discussions, like we should record that, And so, or maybe if we didn't say that, we were thinking it. And I think that's just how it evolved. And we really loved horror podcasts, and we had a lot of really good conversations about them, and not just talking about them as normal friends would, but as, people in some academia or like critiquing circles would do. And so we just thought we had something to add, and that we could add value to the podcasting community and give something for our listeners to hear and enjoy.
Well, and not to overly gush too much, but I think that, we could start a podcast. And the reason that it sort of works for us is because we appreciate and value each other's opinion on movies. We trust each other's recommendations and judgment. And it's super easy for us to have a conversation and not let our own particular viewpoints get in the way of, dialogue in general. Yeah. Lastly, she asks, any horror novels that you guys absolutely love?
See, the first thing for me, like I want to say like Alien, like the novelization, or Pet Sematary or It, or, some of these other things. But like for me, of course, growing up, it was Goosebumps, R.L. Stine and all that. But for me, it's and then as I got older, a little bit older, it was Christopher Pike. I actually like the adult Christopher Pike book called Season of Passage. And that is my favorite horror novel because it's also sci-fi and fantasy all rolled into one big novel. And it is to this day probably my favorite genre and horror sci-fi book of all time.
And he's lent me a copy of that book to read, and I did read it a couple years ago, and it's fantastic. Jay, there are so many horror novels that I love. I couldn't even begin to list them all. Some of my favorites would be It. It is my favorite book of all time, period, horror or non. I also really enjoy Pet Sematary. I like a lot of the work of Ira Levin, so like Rosemary's Baby, Sliver, Stepford Wives are some of my favorite. When I was a teenager or preteen, I sort of like would read any horror novel I could get my hands on. So I've read a lot of different authors. So you and I could talk about this for a very long time if you like horror literature. But essentially, if it has the name Stephen King on it, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and we've been all over the place. I mean, anything from like The House of Usher,
Oh, yeah.
to
I'm sure. I mean, we both enjoy Poe. We both enjoy a lot of
Lovecraft.
Lovecraft for sure. I mean, like not even just novels, but short stories. I mean, we're both avid readers, and I mean, we read a lot more than just horror. I sometimes find myself these days watching more horror movies than reading horror literature or horror work. But it's something I should get back into. More recently, if you're looking for a book to read that's sort of like off the radar, I read something called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It's crazy, it's scary, and you can read it real fast, but I suggest the audiobook because the narrator's fantastic, so go check that one out.
Well, thank you, Jay, so much for all those questions. That's amazing. So keep them coming.
That's right. She comments a lot on our Facebook, and we really appreciate that. Brock from Cocktail Party Massacre asks,
without telling each other your answers, what classic monster, universal or not, would the other be and why?
Gosh. So I have to go ahead and say it. This is probably not a traditional monster, but I think it's still a monster. And I'm going to say that Robert is Hannibal Lecter.
What? He's a fucking psychopath.
Well, okay. So he's incidentally human because, let's face it, he's cannibalizing people and then like ripping their faces off and wearing them as masks. That's very monstrous.
Yeah, it's true.
That's a very monster thing to do. Mm-hmm. He's actually a lot more effective than you'd say like one of like a Romero Ghoul could be. So I would say that he counts. And if y'all didn't know, Robert is an accomplished chef. And so is Hannibal. And Hannibal is very intelligent and educated. And so is Robert. So it just all kind of fits. I just can't see you as like Dracula or Frankenstein or the Mummy or,
I mean, I'll take that. It was a very
maybe
nice...
Bride of Frankenstein if she had
it's
pearls
probably
to
more
clutch.
likely. I mean, because I shriek like no other, right?
I don't know. Does she make a nice souffle?
No, but neither do I really. So
good, because I hate souffle.
This is kind of a hard question for me. I mean, I don't know. I know my friend has a very nice beard, and it's something that I'm sort of jealous about because I can't grow one quite like his. So
am I McReady Lash the Thing?
I'm just going to call you the Wolfman. But
wow.
He's misunderstood and hairy. I don't know.
Okay.
Wait. Yeah, I guess the guy from The Thing, but he wasn't a monster, was he? He was just a...
He could have been. It was ambiguous.
I guess the ending is ambiguous. I don't know. He also has a pool, and I've seen the way he dives into it, so maybe the creature from the Black Lagoon. A combination of both, I suppose.
I see what you're doing now, Brock. You're trying to break us apart so
That's
you can
right.
add us to your podcast.
Creating all this strife. So that was a nice compliment. Thank you, Chris. And I hope you appreciate my backhanded one.
Yeah, yes, fuck you. So Movie Geek and Proud is also another podcast that we know and love. And they ask,
do you think it's possible in our future to see a horror equivalent of Love, Simon? In other words, can we get a Hollywood blockbuster release of a horror movie with a predominantly gay cast and or theme?
That's a very heavy question.
Short answer, yes.
Yeah.
Next question.
Obviously, yeah, I think so. I think if you look at some of the horror movies that are coming out as of late, things like What Keeps You Alive, right? There's a lot of like queer horror going around.
Well,
now.
what makes a blockbuster, right? Because you can have really insanely popular and successful independent films that are made on a shoestring budget that basically become blockbusters, right?
Exactly.
So I feel like there's more. We're seeing more and more of that. And we just need a really, really good one to come along to be popular. And I don't think that the masses are going to reject it outright just because it happens to have, a predominantly gay cast or at least a main character that might be gay. But I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive.
Well, and here's the thing. Here's what I think, guys. Are these blockbusters that come out actually really good? And some of this independent horror that comes out is fantastic. And I mean, it's far superior, I think, than a lot of these big budget studio movies that are released. And if you're looking for a cast or themes, in the LGBT community, this is where we should look. And even more than movies, I think that looking at television or streaming is really the way to go for things like this. We can't forget things like The Haunting of Hill House that came out last year that had, a really good, solid gay character. And if we're looking forward to things for LGBT people as far as horror movies go, I think that we should start to focus on stuff like Netflix or Hulu, or even just smaller independent festival releases instead of looking to the studios to give us what we want.
And if you're looking for an equivalent of Love, Simon, I don't really see that as a blockbuster, and I certainly don't see it as like a very high budget film, in which case you could say the equivalent already exists and say like What Keeps You Alive, right?
Or even Hellbent,
Yeah.
So, and Love, Simon, while it may not have been a blockbuster, had a lot of advertising push behind it. And I think that was a great step forward as far as like a representation in film. But I really think that some of these smaller directors or people who have a voice are what we should be paying attention to.
So thank you, Movie Geek and Proud. We really appreciate that question, and I think it's really interesting, and I think we need to think about it from here on out.
That's right. And let's just say, if you have a movie deep inside you, go make it so we could all talk about it. So,
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. Thank you guys for all the questions. We got many more than these 3, and we are going to hold on to those and answer them on another iteration of Shooting the Flames. So keep listening for your question and our answer.
Horror news.
So the first thing on our list is the New Mutants and Grudge are pushed back, maybe indefinitely. I did not hear about this. I didn't think I guess it's just Grudge, right?
It's just Grudge, yeah.
I didn't think that was getting pushed back.
Yep, I saw an article. Literally, so guys, we have an episode that came out in February of the best of 2018 and looking forward to 2019. And both of these movies were listed in our looking forward to. And subsequently, the week after we recorded that, I read these news articles and I posted them both on our Facebook page if you want to go and look at it. The New Mutants, which has been completed for quite some time now and has been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, has been pushed back yet again. So I just read an article this morning, in fact, before recording, that the new release date is actually going to be September the 2nd, but it looks like it's going to be released on Hulu instead of in theaters.
Well, I don't know. Like I don't think this is that surprising. I keep seeing horror films that keep being pushed back by a year, even more. Like It Follows, I think was made like 2 years before it was finally released in theaters. And I think they just look for a really good opportunity to make the most of these small budgets because they can make many, many times the budgets as horror films.
That's true.
So I think they're just waiting till the iron's hot to strike, right?
And that's exactly what it is, because both of these movies were slated for release at the end of the summer, and that's sort of the last big push for studios to get their tentpole movies out. And, you know, if something is slated to come out the same day, that's obviously going to crush it at the box office. You know, there's no sense in, you know, not being able to recoup your investment in a film. And so, like, these two particular movies that we were looking forward to, I mean, sort of pushed back, I thought, indefinitely, but it looks like we'll be getting the New Mutants after all, just not in the theater. And I think tentatively Grudge will be coming out in February of next year. So a full year to wait. Yeah.
Holy crap. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Next up, Dr. Sleep. So Chris is a big fan of Mike Flanagan, as am I. We both love The Haunting of Hill House, and he adapted Dr. Sleep by Stephen King, which is the sequel to The Shining, as a film, and it was slated to be released in 2020. However, it has been moved up very, very quickly, and it is coming out in the fall of this year instead.
Oh, wow. So I can't imagine there was much of a break then from shooting from The Haunting of Hill House to this.
No. Well, I think that it's been in the can for a little bit, and I didn't know why they were sitting on it for so long, but it seems like to me that people have seen this movie and it must be phenomenal, so they're like releasing it sooner than later.
Well, he's a great director.
I think that is also the case too. I think that people were very impressed with Hill House and his previous work, and I think that he is, you know, a great new voice in horror, and people are trying to strike while that iron is hot too. So he's getting pushed up. So we have that to look forward to quickly.
Awesome. The next thing on our list is Zack Snyder's new zombie heist movie, Arisen from the Dead.
So, do you know anything about this, Chris?
No.
Okay, so Zack Snyder, who directed the remake of Dawn of the Dead.
Back in 2004.
Right, and then he also did 300 and, you know,
blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
DC stuff. Yeah. He had his hands on a script about people driving into the wasteland of Las Vegas during a zombie apocalypse for this, like, fantabulous heist of a casino.
Seen it.
Well,
I don't know, I felt like Resident Evil 2 or something.
This is supposed to be like just crazy gory. I've read some things over the years.
A zombie
about this movie.
heist in Las Vegas.
Yeah, so people are trying to steal money
out of a deserted casino.
Yeah, but there's zombies everywhere.
Okay.
I don't know. I like Zack Snyder when he makes zombie movies, so I'm super excited for it. I've read some stuff from like previous scripts of this movie. Apparently it's been floating around Hollywood for a long time. Some of it had to do with like zombie rape or something. So I know that it's completely out there and crazy. And I'm just super excited to see what he does with this particular concept, because I know he could make a good zombie film. And I'm pretty sure he's going to take out some of that, you know, crazy unwanted shit. So And lastly on our list of news, Blumhouse, one of our favorite production companies, and really has been putting out some fantastic horror movies over the last 10 years at this point, I think, or close to it, has entered the Universal Monster remake. Universal tried over the last couple years to sort of reboot this dark universe of things like The Mummy and The Wolfman and Dracula, and they just weren't doing very good. So I think lastly we had Tom Cruise's The Mummy that came out last summer, and it was a bomb and just terrible.
Yeah.
However, Blumhouse is now making their own, and one of my favorite new horror directors, Lee Wannell, is set to write and direct The Invisible Man. And he's doing a remake, or I think it's going to be a TV series actually, of Escape from New York. So not quite a Universal, but he's got a lot coming on. So I think it's been a good month to be him, and I'm super looking forward to see what he does with both of these things.
Everything depends on who he casts as Snake Plissken.
Oh my God. Well, first of all, I'm not even sure I want a remake of that, but...
Yeah, honestly, after seeing Upgrade, and of course, usually he's a tag-along to James Wan, and he's basically a co-creator of the Conjuring universe, and of course he was a co-producer or director on Saw when they were like basically student filmmakers still, and I think he actually starred in some of those movies as well. Obviously, he was in Saw, but he was also, I think, in one of the Conjurings.
He was in the one with the kid in the Astral. Yeah, Insidious. Yeah.
Okay. But I was really happy with Upgrade. And I almost just want to see what he does next as far as like a Netflix film or something, because it was really original. And I mean, obviously it didn't come from nothing, but it was really, really well done. And I kind of want to see what he can do as far as original content, because he did a really good job. And both of these things have been done. We've seen a couple of different versions of these before, and I almost feel like it's a waste of talent, but I guess I could be proven wrong, and I want to be proven wrong. So we'll see.
Well, and too, I mean, I watched some of these new Universal remakes they did. I watched Tom Cruise's Mummy movie, and it was more action than horror, and I see where they were going with it, but I don't think that's what horror fans want. If you're going to do something as a remake of beloved characters like Universal, they need to be handled with care and really put, some time and effort into it, and I think that Blumhouse can do that.
That's the movie monster you are.
Blumhouse?
No, Beloved. From that Oprah Winfrey movie.
I can't. Why don't you know the word?
B-A-L-V-E-D. Beloved.
Calling me Tandy Newton? Are you calling Tandy Newton a monster?
Sometimes.
Because that's accurate. Sorry, Tandy. I do love you.
I said Thandy.
No.
I thought she was from Spain.
Thandy? Like Sandy Duncan?
Thandy. There's a TH at the beginning.
Like Dandy and Dandy. I can't even talk. Okay.
What's next? Trailers.
So I love to stay on top of movies that are coming out soon. And unlike a lot of my friends in the horror community, I don't mind being spoiled by a trailer. So here's just a couple that we've seen over the last month that we have some things to say about.
And we'll link these in the show notes if you want to watch them on YouTube really quickly. And Child's Play is our first.
I have been on the fence about this remake for a very, very long time. And once I heard they were casting Aubrey Plaza, I was like, okay, maybe, yeah, it's going to be good.
Oh, she's so good in Legion.
I haven't seen that yet.
It's really good. And of course, one of our favorites from The Guest and Downton Abbey. What's his name?
Dan Stevens.
Yeah.
Hottie Dan Stevens.
He's crazy in Legion, but she is even crazier. And the first season, she gets to do a lot of her own stuff. And Aubrey Plaza is crazy anyway. And so it's amazing to watch her performance in that. And man, I can't wait for this. I just saw the trailer because I don't really give two shits about Chucky. I never have. I don't have any kind of emotional investment or nostalgia attached to this. I mean, it's always been funny and entertaining, but this looks actually more interesting and a little bit more, it might have a little bit more substance than the original films, in my opinion. And I love seeing Audrey Plaza in that trailer.
Yes.
And I am actually really looking forward to this film now.
I think that there's been so much advance in technology and toys since the original Child's Play came out that it's going to be fun to see exactly where they take this doll.
Oh yeah, they're definitely doing a technology thing with it, and almost like a Ghost in the Machine kind of situation with it. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, and it almost looks like they could have like a mass like, issue with these toys, like en masse, not just this one family.
Yeah, we're hoping.
So I don't know. That's what the trailer kind of alluded to me, but I didn't see anyone else commenting on that. So we'll see.
Well, let's just say that this movie sort of jumped up in my excited list for 2019, just based on that small teaser trailer.
Yep. The next is Pet Sematary. What do you think about the latest trailer for that?
Okay, so on the flip side of this, I've been super looking forward to seeing Pet Sematary since they announced it and they started announcing the cast. And the first trailer they put out was so good, and I was just growing more and more excited, every day closer to release date. And then this new trailer came out, and it's sort of like dropping very quickly off my excited radar. I don't know.
See, me too, a little bit. I wasn't too excited about it to begin with. And I don't have, I don't have any kind of issues with a remake from the original. I don't think the original was that great. I think it's a cult classic and it was kind of a sleeper hit, but honestly, it's not that great. It has this amazing moments in that film, but, I think a remake could be made, but it seems like they're making some needless changes to the novel. But
yeah,
honestly, it really depends on how they do it.
I think needless is an understatement in that particular sentence. I think that some of these changes, and I have to hold some reservation, until I see the actual movie. But if you haven't seen the trailer and you're looking forward to seeing Pet Sematary, do not watch the trailer. Just go see the movie. Hold on to whatever idea you have and go see it. Because I think this trailer kind of spoils a lot of the movie in the 2 minutes that they show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So, next up on the list is a reason that I should have been watching the Super Bowl, frankly, and that is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Oh, yeah.
So I did not watch the big game because, frankly, I don't give a shit.
So did they release a full trailer for this? Because I saw a bunch of shorts.
It was 3 snippet trailers, 3 or 4 snippets.
Yeah.
And up till now, we hadn't seen anything of what's been going on with that movie. It's being produced by Guillermo del Toro, so that's, really good on that front. But, as a child in the 80s, I was obsessed with some of these books and the art that was contained within them. And I was very concerned and very protective of this sort of thing, that they were going to ruin it.
Well, this is Guillermo del Toro. The creature effects are always going to be fantastic.
And it looks that way. And I'm super happy to report, if you have not seen these teaser trailers, that they are staying true to the artwork in these books. And some of the creatures that they have created look fantastic, so close to the originals. And it's amazing to me how they could do that sort of thing. Now, we don't really know much about the plot or what's going on, but it seems like a lot of these short stories or tales that they had in these books are coming to life in some way or form in this particular town.
A la like Goosebumps? Or...
Right, yeah.
Great.
So I'm just hoping, obviously it's not going to be a hard R, but...
I wish it would be, and it did seem when I watched these teaser trailers, I really wanted to love it because of the creature effects. But at the same time, the horror moments that they portrayed in those teasers were so vanilla, it was kind of disappointing to me. So,
and that's the thing too, is that I don't have any high hopes now for something that's going to be, crazy scary, but I do remember how scared I was reading these books and looking at these pictures and sort of like hiding it from view, but having to go back and look at it. I was so obsessed with it.
Yeah.
So scaring myself on purpose. So it's going to be fun to watch, just as some sort of like, nostalgic visit to that sort of thing.
And, at the same time, it may not actually be a nostalgia play as much for us as it might be just, passing the torch to a younger generation so they can grow up with a movie like this. And that might be explaining why it may not be like a hard R or something.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it plays and what the target looks like after we watch it.
That's right.
The next trailer we saw is Octavia Spencer's Ma.
Holy shit. Like, I had sort of heard some rumblings about this movie.
I had never heard anything. It just came out from nowhere. I just saw Octavia Spencer and I saw like Ma and I saw horror. I'm like, what?
I knew that she was making a horror movie with Blumhouse involved, and then the trailer just dropped randomly and I was completely blown away by it. It looks so good.
Yeah, I don't know if I was blown away, but it does look really, really good. And I really want to see where they take it because she is an amazing actress.
She really is.
And if she can sell anything, she's going to sell this. And and you can tell just in the trailer that she's having so much fun in this role. And it's always fun to watch, people play and have fun.
Exactly. Especially if they're not used to, or we're not used to seeing them in genre films like that. If they really just take it and run with it and do a great job and have a good time in their performance, it's going to show and we're all going to love it. And I think that the plot line in this seems pretty basic, but
I don't know. It looks like it has a couple layers. It looks almost a little Alex Forrest-y,
Hey, I'm down for that.
Yeah.
I am totally ready for this movie. It's coming out very soon. Chris, I think this is one that we have to go see together.
It's like Fatal Attraction for like mothers or something.
It's just going to be great. If you have not seen this trailer, guys, go watch it. I don't think it spoils anything for the movie. It's really just a great primer for what's about to come.
Oh, yeah. Our next segment of this episode is about our recommendations of things that we've seen recently that, not necessarily a full hot take, but just a few things that we've watched that we thought we'd talk about.
Yeah, guys, we watch a lot of movies every single month. Some of them are involved in our podcast, sort of like homework, and then others we just watch. I can say for sure that sometimes I just sit on my couch for hours on end and watch movie after movie. So some things are good, some things are bad, and this is where we tell you what you can quickly find and watch.
Yeah. So mine is not really horror. The last thing I watched in the theater was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
And I actually want to see this movie.
It was so good. The music is great. The voice acting is wonderful. The look of this film is, I think they're trying to patent the way that it was animated because it is amazing. It looks so good. It's just kind of a mind-blowing visual experience from beginning to end. And it was just great, like emotionally from beginning to end. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm going to buy it on like 4K when it comes out. And it was such high production value for an animation film. And it just came out of nowhere. Like I was not anticipating this film.
I didn't even know what it was.
Like I'm a Marvel fan, right? I'm kind of a Marvel fanboy, but I don't really care. Like I'm not one of those people that are watching trailers 50,000 times, for these things. And I didn't really care.
Unlike the other trailers.
I just thought this was like a play by Sony because this is not Marvel Studios. It's an association with, but it's not Marvel Studios. It's Sony Animation.
Others trying to hold on to Spider-Man as long as they can.
But this was done in the works for a long time. And it's based off of the Black Spider-Man, Miles Morales, created by a female writer in Marvel. And they basically based the artwork off of her artwork. And she was working on this film with them. And it shows. And they partnered up. Everyone was super passionate about the project. And it is super, super good. You've got like Nicolas Cage in there playing like a noir Spider-Man. Like all these Spider-Mans from all these different dimensions basically get sucked into the same thing. You've got like a pig Spider-Man. Like you've got
spider pig?
You've got Spider-Gwen. Gwen Stacy is a Spider-Man in one universe. So she's
God.
And so you've got like Nicolas Cage as the noir Spider-Man, and he's like attacking people with things, and it's just interesting because it's like there's different physical rules for each one, and so like the pig or whatever it is, Spider-Ham, that's what it was, Spider-Ham.
Well, I keep thinking of The Simpsons.
He could pull out a giant fucking cartoon hammer and like start attacking people with it, versus like other cartoon, like they're more of a realistic like physical universe, and so they all can do different things, and they all interact with each other differently and interact with the world differently. And it only has those moments of wackiness, like few and far between. And I don't want to emphasize that, but there was something special about it that just added flavor to it that I thought was really, really unique besides the aesthetic value of the film, which is great. And I think it's going to be on many, many people's top 10s for animated movies, as far as like top 10 animated films you should see before you die type of thing. I just watched a top 10 on that recently. And wow, it's definitely going to have its place in history.
Well, it's nominated for an Oscar. I know that.
Oh yeah, it's going to win, hands down.
It's won almost everything so far. And obviously we're recording this before the Oscars. They are next weekend, so we're looking forward to that. But as you know, Chris, suffer from superhero fatigue, and it just seems like there's just so much out there. Every time I turn around, it's a new superhero movie, and I just sort of lost interest. And when this trailer came out, I had no idea what this movie was. And when I saw it, I was like, okay, this seems like it's right up my alley. It seems like something I would enjoy, and it's definitely on my list.
I definitely don't get fatigued from genres or anything like that. I try to judge a movie on its own merits. Now, if there's like a universe where there's a tone that I get tired of, like I got tired of DC's tone that they were trying to do, so I can get that, and so I got some fatigue, but I still watch them every once in a while. Like Wonder Woman got really great reviews, so I watched that, and it was good. But, like Marvel has been hitting out of the park with several different things that they've been doing.
Yet more Oscars for Marvel. So,
yeah. And Black Panther's done really well. I remember the first one that people were actually talking about, Oscar buzz, was actually a couple of years ago with one of the Captain America films.
I think both Winter Soldier and Civil War got a lot of Oscar buzz.
Yeah. So Infinity War was amazing. So they're really hitting out of the park, and it's not going to last forever. So I would say for anyone that has fatigue from just the marketing of all this stuff that's getting pushed in your faces, brush that aside, try and ignore it, and enjoy the films for what they are, because we are right now in a golden age. And I think we should enjoy it while it lasts, because it's not going to last forever. They cannot maintain this.
I will say that I am not a huge fan of superhero movies as of late. I was in the past. And I'm also not a huge fan of a lot of animated features. And for me to want to see this as much as I do probably says something. So.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm one of the stupid people that was just like, I don't have as much interest or draw or natural inclination to go see animation movies. And so that was my opinion going into like a lot of these Pixar films, like Up or especially WALL-E. Like WALL-E blew me away when I saw it. Great. And I just, and like Finding Nemo, like for the first time, like a lot of these films, like I just was blown away by, like Ember's New Groove. I thought it was childish. I was like, well, I'm not going to watch that. And I watched it, and I still love it to this day. Like it's like comfort food.
Maybe
right?
I just shouldn't shit all over these movies and just give them a chance.
Yeah,
I shouldn't be so snobby about it.
We've got to just judge these films on their own basis, on their own merits, because they're standalone. They each have their own production crew and everything else. But Marvel Studios itself has been hitting it out of the park.
Well, I will say that there's a week now from the time this recording is happening to when the Oscars come out, and I will be watching Black Panther this week. So
okay,
there we go. I watched a movie this month, released at the very start of February, something that I was looking forward to seeing for quite a long time because it made some festival rounds, and it's sort of a horror adjacent film called Piercing, and it's by the same director of The Eyes of My Mother. Have you seen that?
No.
It's a really fun, weird black and white horror film, but Piercing to me is so much better. It is sort of about a guy who lives a very suburban lifestyle. He's got a wife and a daughter, and he kisses his wife goodbye one day to go on a supposed business trip, but really he is flying to a city, checking into a hotel, and trying to get an escort so he could murder her. So he's like living out his fantasy in this way. However, when the escort gets to his hotel room, he may be in for more than he bargained for with her. And it's just a really crazy film. But what struck me the most about it is that it is just some sort of like an American Giallo Renaissance homage. Huh. Just everything from its styling to its costumes to the way it was filmed,
Man, I feel like I'm getting FOMO, man. Like, I still haven't seen like What Keeps You Alive, and now I have to see Piercing, and like,
well, you definitely have to see Piercing because it's so good. Even the score of this movie, there's not an original score. They just took scores from other Italian movies and Giallo, like horror films. I love that, like and just put them in there.
Yeah, Scorsese does sometimes, like he did for Shutter Island, I think, and of course Tarantino's done a lot.
And
so sometimes you can just pick the perfect thing and place it in, and sometimes you can center a scene around something that you had in mind. And I love thinking about music and centering something around it.
And I think that this movie actually is from Quentin Tarantino's production company.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think he's got a hand in it a little bit. It seems it's kind of like watching a Tarantino film when you're watching it.
Huh.
Like I was expecting to love it. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I do. So it's fantastic. I've listened to the soundtrack now a lot. So Casey from Facebook, yes, I love these Giallo scores. And I've added some new ones to my list, so you'll be happy to know. And I think I'm going to like seek you out on Facebook and tell you which ones I like the best. And if you haven't seen this movie, man, go watch it because I think you would like it, especially just for that one particular thing. Mia Wachowski is in this movie. She played Alice in the new Alice in Wonderland films from Disney, which are weird and trippy on their own, right? And she is just such a phenomenal actress. And the guy who plays the lead in this, I think, is super, super hot. And it was just fun to watch it for that too. Right. If you have not seen this, it's playing in theaters currently, but it's also on VOD. So you could buy or rent it on Amazon or iTunes. So go do it. I promise you're going to love it. I have one more film to talk about, and it's really not a recommendation. It's just a brag. Because for the last couple years, I have been like off and on trying to watch a little terrible movie called A Serbian Film. And every time I think I'm going to do it, I sort of like chicken out. But I got one of my friends to make me a copy of it. And I finally sat down and watched it from start to finish. And I'm kind of proud that I made it through without like killing myself or anything. It's not near as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's quite disturbing. But
Was it like in Cannibal Holocaust territory, or?
I think it's far worse than that. So you're dealing a lot. You're dealing a lot with like sado activity and there's a lot going on in this movie that it's really not for like the faint of heart. I think a lot of horror fans who feel they've like become desensitized to some of these things would even have a hard time watching it.
Definitely something that your husband would not watch.
Oh, no. He cannot. In fact, I told him, I said, hey, I'm going to watch this movie. He was watching something else in another room. I was like, please let me know before you walk into the room because I've never seen it before and I don't know what's going to be on screen if you just happen to walk in. And there were some times that I'm glad that he didn't just walk in. So, I mean, like I said, this is not a recommendation. I'm not telling people to go watch this movie because, I mean, it's kind of and
God, who made this? Woody Allen?
No, it's way more enjoyable than his movies. Oh. I think this movie has a lot to say about some things, you know, about maybe like porn addiction or self-medication as it comes to like sexual activity. But if you're not in the right mindset or you're kind of squeamish, it's not something for you to do. So I'm just kind of proud that I actually made it through it without like ralphing all over the place.
Noted. So I will not be seeing this film.
Well, I own it just in case.
I don't mind, you know, splatter and gore and all that, but I like it, you know, when it makes sense and it's not meant, like literally meant to weaponize and disturb you.
I think he was trying to make some comments about like censorship from his home country, Serbia.
Okay.
And I mean, like he was really trying to be deep. And the stuff that I have read about it that he was trying to say, I didn't get. I got something else completely. But I talked to my friend who made a copy of it for me, and we had a long conversation about it. And you know, I get it on a certain level, right? But it's not something that I would ever watch again because it was kind of harrowing.
Well, I mean, like, ladies and gentlemen, I just showed Robert last night Peter Jackson's splatter opus, Dead Alive, which is like beginning to end gross, you know, and is like buckets and buckets of, I bet like half their budget was literally just blood, like fake blood.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's done all kind of tongue in cheek and over the top, right? And so you can handle that because the tone is not meant to disturb you. It's not meant as an attack to the viewer in a way.
No.
So that's not something that I enjoy so much. So as far as like when it's done that darker, more disturbing way, because at the end of the day, like if there's not a true lesson to be learned from my perspective, you know, then it's not really adding value to my life or my experience having watched the film. And it does not sound like a Serbian film is going to do that for me.
No.
So.
And I have recalled, because you and I have talked about this movie before, and I told you that I wanted to see it just so I could say that I've seen it. And you told me, and this is pretty sage advice for anybody who's listening, if you're in doubt on, you know, wanting to watch a movie. Chris told me, you can't unsee something that you see. And that's true. So,
That's
I
true.
mean, it's always with you no matter what. So
Be careful. Yeah, be careful what you watch. Well, guys, I think that's all for us this month. We got your questions and comments, so please keep them coming, and we will answer them to the best of our ability.
that's right. If you have any comments, please, you can find our posts on Twitter and Facebook at The Film Flamers. For every episode we put out, we have a space for you to direct message us or comment in these places, and we might read some of them out. If you have a specific question for Chris or myself, then please, you can find us on there, or you could also email us. And what's our email address?
TiredQueens@filmflamers.com.
Let us know what you think about this kind of episode. I think that we had a really good time having this conversation, and we would like to keep doing more of it. So if you like it, let us know. And also, if you really liked it, you can go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and give us that 5-star rating and a little snippet review. That could also find its way into being said and shooting the flames.
Oh, definitely.
And before we go, we need to recognize just a couple people who have become new friends of ours on Patreon.
Thank you, Someday Sailor. You're our only hope.
Thank you, Erica, very, very much. We're happy to have you.
Thank you, Matt.
Guys, these people have joined us on Patreon. They are getting hours and hours of bonus content that we've already created and more to come. Not to mention, some of them have joined up at the $5 level where they get our episodes sometimes like 3 or 4 weeks in advance.
Yeah, it's
right?
getting. Yeah, originally the idea was to like come out a couple days early, but you know what's happening is I edit all at once, and so a lot of these are coming out 3+ weeks early, so you guys can get it really super quick.
And we always share with you what we're going to be doing in the upcoming months, and this month is no different. So if anything we're about to say sparks your interest, head over to Patreon. You might get it early. So just as a reminder, for April, we are going to be covering the 80s comedy horror, and not the other way around, Student Bodies.
That's true.
And keeping with that theme, our top 10 episode in April is also going to be Chris and myself's top 10 favorite horror comedies. Not the other way around.
And comedy horrors.
I guess it could be either. And we have much more coming out for you in April, so guys, stay tuned.
All right, so that about wraps it up. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you guys so much.
And until next time, sweet dreams. Ba 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 ba.
Goes, ah.